You won't believe how quietly it all started, until the silence broke wide open. Mary's spiritual exit was just the first crack in now. The stories, the money, and the masks are all unraveling. Were the sister wives ever truly equal? Or was someone always playing the long game? If you've ever given too much for too long, this one will hit home. Watch now, because the receipts are just the beginning. It began quietly, most unravelings do. Not with some dramatic declaration or public meltdown, but with a sense, a change. The kind of quiet that seeps in after decades of biting your tongue, holding your peace, saying to yourself, "It's not worth the battle." Until one day, you acknowledge that silence has taken from you more than words ever would. For more than 10 years, we observed the Brown family living, loving, and believing in one householder. At least that is what we were meant to believe. A plural family, bound together by will, supported by religious belief, and strained repeatedly by the burden of its own potential. Kody, the husband juggling more than one wife. Robyn, the newest wife to arrive but somehow still always in the middle. And then there is Mary, Janelle, and Christine, the ladies who helped construct it all before the limelight arrived. But what happens when the base is not as strong as it has appeared? This isn't about a reality show anymore. It's about years of unspoken sacrifices, of women spending time, money, and emotion on something that was never equal to start with. And now, one after another, they're leaving not just Kody, but the spiritual seal that long ago pledged forever. Why now? What's different? Perhaps it's the age. That moment in life when you begin questioning more difficult things about whom you have been, what you have accepted, and if the peace you thought you were maintaining was merely deferring the fallout. If you've ever lingered too long in something, be it a marriage, an occupation, or a part of yourself, you'll recognize this. Because this tale isn't merely about sister wives, it's about what happens when women who have been underestimated, overlooked, and starved emotionally at last begin comparing notes. And not merely about the pain, but about the money, the choices, the patterns that were right before our eyes. Mary was the first to go public with her release, and it wasn't just a breakup, it was a message. A line drawn in the spiritual sand that said, "I see it now, and I'm done pretending not to." But that was just the beginning. See, it turns out Mary may have walked away with more than heartache. She may have walked away with receipts. Literal ones. And that's where it all begins to change. Because the further you dig, the more the old questions resurface, but this time with sharper corners. What actually did happen to all those communal funds? How did Robyn end up in the largest house, with the legal wedlock and the sole nanny on the payroll? And if the other wives were surreptitiously chipping in, receiving less and less in return, was this actually a family? Or something more akin to a slow extraction? For a while, fans attributed it to favoritism. Kody's affection leaning one way, Robyn's tears always justifying the discrepancy. But the latest theory going around? It's not favoritism. It could be strategy. The kind that appears kind on the surface but below is all about control. And that's where Janelle and Christine come back into the spotlight. Two women who kept their heads low for years, brought up children, constructed side businesses, made do. But now they're said to be asking questions they used to let pass, tallying figures, finding fault in moments that didn't add up. And slowly, something is coalescing, something that's beginning to resemble less a sisterhood and more a reckoning. And now, the detective process has started. Screenshots, timeline, donations. Fans are reconstructing it all, frame by frame. One fan says they even found a clip of Mary assisting Robyn move after Robyn had been legally married to Kody. She wasn't assisting, the commenter explained. She was serving. And that's the piece that's leaving viewers amazed. Watch those early seasons of Las Vegas now and Robyn's crocodile tears? Not so pure after all. Perhaps it wasn't keeping the family intact. Perhaps it was about not rocking her own little home. And Mary? Mary was the cover story. But if Robyn thought that door would remain closed forever, she apparently didn't realize how Sister Wives fans are, particularly when they smell a rat. It's akin to someone saying recently, it's like the only times you speak to them is when they have something they need, or when you have something to tell them. It's not just the drama, it's the awakening. And that awakening? That's where this story really begins. Because what if Mary's silent departure wasn't a finish, but the beginning of a complete unraveling? What if the spiritual bonds were never unity, but keeping the illusion going just long enough for one individual to sit on the throne? And now that illusion is unraveling, So come along. Let's go back to the Vegas dead end, to the boutique debuts, the hushed-over decisions, the peculiar timing of things that had no meaning. Until now, let's trace the emotional thread in the trail of money. Because this time, the receipts are not just cash. They're spiritual. And they might be the one thing that finally exposes what really transpired. Perhaps if I am present, I can prevent him from carrying this out. And perhaps, hopefully, I can say, let's not make a decision today. That statement punched fans in the gut. She is clinging to something that has slipped away from her for years. She is no longer trying to salvage the relationship. She's only attempting to put on the brakes on the finality. But deep inside, she already knows nothing will ever change. It hasn't for a long time. Do you promise? She asks, and it settles like the final leaf falling from a dead branch. The unraveling didn't start with a dramatic reveal. It began quietly, only one sentence, way down at the bottom of a Reddit post. Most watchers might have scrolled right over it, but for Die Hard Sister Wives followers, that lone line burst everything wide open. Mary was never a threat. That's why Robyn needed her to stay. That's when things got ugly. Suddenly, old footage was being watched again in hindsight. Robyn's breakdowns, her sobbing entreaties that the family wasn't fitting in, they weren't mere theatrics for TV. Some fans are now certain they were clever maneuvers, strategized. That's the theory making the rounds online. No, and this time, the so-called proof is arriving quickly. As far as insiders are concerned, Robyn's long game didn't have to do with religion or love. It had to do with structure, power, control. And Mary? She was the secret to all of it. Not as a real wife, not even as a close friend, but as a stand-in, a subservient, unassuming buffer who held Robyn's seat secure without ever getting too close. Mary said something lately that struck fans hard. I was at the bed and breakfast this weekend, and it needs me. It was straightforward. But then she added this, that, and all the rest of what Kody said to me this year. It means I likely won't be renewing my lease here. There it was, the silent acknowledgement everyone had been preparing for. She attempted to temper it, explaining that she still intended to construct on the land, that it wasn't forever, but her words sounded more like a goodbye cloaked in ambiguity. Since Mary's officially parted ways with Kody spiritually and emotionally, fans are no longer discussing closure. They're discussing betrayal. Because what actually ignited the fan base wasn't Mary's departure. That had been a while coming. It was the silence that came after. No word from Robyn, not even a flicker from Kody. Just nothing. But out of sight, rumors began to circulate. An anonymous message from someone purportedly close to the family went around online before it vanished as fast as it appeared. It stated, she was the ultimate sister wife and ever in the way, kept sending money, and didn't ask questions. Whether it was valid or not, that sentence reawakened old suspicions. Had Robyn truly regarded Mary as not a sister wife or a friend, but an easy ghost emotionally cast aside but still financially beneficial? It wouldn't be the first time that fans had felt they were seeing a completely different show than that which was being broadcast by TLC. There isn't a relationship there to mend, and if there was, Mary would be the only attempting it. But I'd be the only one, and to be honest, that's the way things have been for years. Maybe not consistently, but for years now I've been the only one. Mary's quiet voice carries a heavy truth, and for fans watching closely, that moment wasn't just heartbreaking, it was revealing. Because now that individuals have discovered a trail, they're not relinquishing, not until all pieces are spread out in the open. And if rumors behind the scenes hold, the actual shocker in all of this, it is not the emotional aftermath. It is the financial one. That is where things could actually blow up. So, let's go back. Back in those Las Vegas days, it all seemed so glossy on the outside. 4 houses huddled together in a bright sunshine cul-de-sac. New homes, new beginnings, fresh starts for all. But behind those doors, said the fan theories and a couple of claimed insiders, something very different was quietly forming. It wasn't all about family harmony. This was about tactics. And at the epicenter of it all, Robyn. While the public discourse was about bonding and blending, those who are intimate with the situation report that Robyn had a far more strategic vision. And Mary? She was not merely included in the family agenda. She was the ground upon which everything rested, not of love or sisterhood, but leverage. Mary once said, I had a connection with her, and now I'm questioning it. Why tell me you want a relationship with me and then go months? That question stings differently now. Robyn was said never to have viewed Mary as a competitor. To her, she might have been the perfect piece of the puzzle, a woman emotionally bypassed by Kody, with no small children remaining to bring up, but still loyal, still attending, still bound in spirit, and most of all, still providing financially. Supporters online have begun referring to it as the Queen Bee strategy. Keep enough sister wives on hand to project the image of a plural household while secretly reaping the rewards of monogamy. One Reddit poster encapsulated it thusly: Mary was like a security deposit on Robyn's throne. She never cashed it in, but it guaranteed the castle stayed hers. It's brazen to say so, but it's gaining traction. Because when you look back, Robyn was always the first to sing Mary's praise, especially after Kody had emotionally shut her out. "You're still part of the family," she'd say. "You still matter." Now, those words feel less comforting and more rehearsed. It's as if she didn't require Mary to be joyful. She simply required her to stay, to remain spiritually sealed, to continue contributing financially, and to never disturb the waters. That type of passive devotion? In accordance with a few insiders, that is what Robyn desired all along. The type that doesn't challenge, doesn't question, simply supports, in silence. Robyn even reminisced about the time. "I used to hang out with Mary and Kody before I ever married Kody. They were goofy together. Sure, they had their arguments, but we were all trying to figure things out. There was a lot of emotional growth. At the time, they all appeared to be acclimating to the nuances of plural marriage. But in time, things changed. Though Christine and Janelle began establishing their independence, speaking up financially, setting limits, Mary took a back seat. She was the safe sister wife, the one who wouldn't challenge. And that's what she was accustomed to, according to those who are close to Robyn's former family, living with multiple wives. In her previous polygamist household, the wives barely spoke and mostly had separate lives. No drama, no tension, just quiet compartmentalization. Mary was that type. Until she wasn't. Because when Mary actually went through with the formal breakup of the spiritual marriage, fans realized it was what it truly was, not necessarily a personal split, but a symbolic one. And some think it wasn't at Kody all along. It was at Robyn. Consider it. Robyn had constructed her entire universe on appearance and the illusion of unity, loyalty, harmony. Mary walking out destroyed that facade, and it rocked the entire universe Robyn had worked so hard to control. The more intact their spiritual family looked, the more legitimacy Robyn seemed to hold, not just in their day-to-day life, but in the afterlife too, based on the beliefs they once openly shared with viewers. So when Mary cut that spiritual cord, the message couldn't have been clearer. I see the game now, and I'm done playing it. But here's the surprise Robyn might not have anticipated. People had been watching. Fans, critics, and random viewers had been quietly piecing it together. And now that Mary has gone public with her emotional breakdown and official spiritual departure, people are asking different questions. What actually kept Mary tied to this family all these years? And who profited most from her remaining? And from someone said to be close to Mary, the paper trail? It may not be lost. It may simply be sitting in folders, emails, and screenshots awaiting. Word is, Mary didn't depart with empty pockets. She didn't walk away with emotional bruises. She walked away with receipts, PayPal logs from years, Venmo payments that read family, unauthorized deductions, and regular monthly draws that just so happen to coincide with Robyn's documented expenses. It isn't proven, but fans are already racing with it like gospel. On TikTok, on Reddit, even Facebook forums, there's a rallying cry. Mary kept the receipts. And if half of all that's being said behind her back proves to be true, Robyn's reputation as the devoted last wife standing could be in for a crashing fall. Among all the posts that are going viral is one that states that Mary's breaking point had nothing to do with heartache and everything to do with accounting. Once she saw that her boutique profits were being sucked into a black hole of shared costs, she allegedly began saving everything, not for herself but as evidence. Evidence for when the gaslighting became deafening to ignore. And now that she's spiritually independent and emotionally detached, fans believe that moment may have arrived. Others claim to have screenshots, actual ones, of outgoing payments in association with Robyn's side of the family. One of the repeating transfers, described as labeled only as support services, tracked almost exactly with the timeline of Robyn's now notorious nanny entering the picture. Then there's a private message Mary supposedly sent to a friend at the end of last year, a tearful voice note that has never been published, but paraphrased by someone who says she heard it. In that note, Mary purportedly said, "I thought we were building a family. I didn't realize I was funding a lifestyle." That line has now been referenced in thousands of tweets, used as memes, sewn into fan videos. Because for a lot of viewers, particularly women who've remained in one-way relationships, it says everything. If Robyn did indeed play Mary like a spiritual benchwarmer, a doormat with no voice, then this was never merely emotional. This was transactional. And when emotional betrayal combines with financial manipulation, that enters into shady territory. Perhaps not criminal, but for those who've lived it, it's personal, particularly among women who've been taken for granted, who stayed too long, gave too much, and suppressed their needs in order to maintain the peace. And this phase of the story has struck a chord. The fan base isn't merely requesting Robyn's perspective anymore, they're demanding the numbers. And if Mary actually does have evidence, and if more than one ex-family member is swapping stories, this budget reckoning may just be getting started. Because guess who's said to be quietly observing all of this go down? Janelle. And if she discovers what many fans are already beginning to suspect, everything may change. Quickly. Reddit naturally is piecing it all together quicker than any television producer could. While TLC was treating us to soft-puffed confessions and uncomfortable family dinners, online detectives were scanning property records, boutique timelines, timestamp 7 background tidbits from Robyn's selfie clips, each face, each couch, each shopping bag blurred out for privacy. And the trend that's unfolding? It has fans stunned. The theory is that Robyn wasn't only profiting from the communal income of the family, she might have been controlling it, deliberately constructing a profile of financial hardship while dwelling in considerable comfort that no one suspected. And Mary? She might have been the last to realize it. One Reddit thread, which is approaching 30 upvotes, lays it all out like a crime board tallying finances. The poster had graphed the documented sources of income for each wife during the Las Vegas years. Mary's boutique business, Janelle's real estate gain, Christine's cookbook sales. Then they plotted those bursts of income against big purchases Robyn's family had made. Timing? Conveniently suspicious. Robyn's home buy? Timed perfectly with Christine's largest cookbook-selling quarter. Tuition for private schools? Immediately following Mary's boutique website saw a boost in traffic. In the meantime, while other wives shot in messy rooms or minimally furnished homes, Robyn's backdrop always remained immaculate shine, decorated, cozy, and above all else paid for. And looming above all of this is a giant open question. What became of my sister wife's closet? It came out with trumpets, it promised empowerment, and then it fizzled unobtrusively. When my sister wife's closet originally opened its doors, it was hailed as a bold move empowering the wives to create something together. But eventually, that dream seemed to fizzle unobtrusively. Orders were delayed, stock dwindled, and eventually, the website just vanished. But sources say something interesting despite the turmoil. The boutique actually raked in a respectable amount of money during its early years. And who was supposedly running the back end? Robyn and Kody. So of course, fans are wondering, where did that money go? Was this supposed joint business ever truly a partnership? Or was it simply yet another funnel attracting goodwill from the audience and public, but leaving its trail in confusion and perhaps some depleted bank account? Rumors now indicate that Robyn never shared the profits beyond the startup phase, and that's leaving everyone with huge questions about whether my sister wife's closet was ever about shared gain or something entirely more one-sided. But it's not just the timeline that's catching people's attention, it's the pattern. A familiar one. Robyn would claim emotional hardship just as major financial decisions were on the table. A mortgage crisis here, a nanny emergency there, a quiet jewelry relaunch that never quite got off the ground. And through it all, she stayed on message. I just want my family to work. I didn't sign up for this chaos. But meanwhile, the emotional trauma unfolded on television. Robyn's household continued to hum along orderly, solid, well-appointed, and well-endowed. While meanwhile, the other wives were downsizing, scrapping by, or simply trying to keep their heads above water. That tension? It's no longer nuanced. It's overwhelming. Now fans are rewatching old episodes from a whole different perspective, freeze-framing Kody's face every time money enters the conversation, re-examining Robyn's timing, taking note of her tears, her pleasant, the benefits that too often followed, and more than a few are whispering the same thing. Someone's been playing the long game. But Robyn may not be the only one who's due for a reckoning, because it appears Janelle, that consistent realist, has begun asking questions she once dismissed. And if she's now exchanging information with Mary, things might get even uglier. Yes, The emotional wreckage was intense, but in this case, it's the financial damage that might blow the entire thing wide open. What Robyn might never have anticipated was for Janelle and Christine to come full circle. For years, the two women appeared to go their separate ways. Janelle prioritized financial survival, practical, thrifty, quietly persevering. Christine prioritized emotional recovery, freedom, peace, a fresh start. But now, according to insiders, recent developments have awakened something in both women. Not only frustration, but determination. What started as rumor Mary hoarding receipts, Robyn's suspicious spending habits, and that silent money trail has apparently become actual conversations between the ex-wives. And the term spiritual release, it surfaced more than once, loudly, with intent. Christine might have been the first to leave the marriage physically, but spiritually, she departed with the seal in place, perhaps out of apathy, perhaps because she was simply too exhausted to give a darn. Janelle, however, was always in the middle of it and out of it. Her marriage to Kody was more of a corporate partnership than wedded bliss. They shared chaos, nothing more. But now that she's allegedly been made privy to the extent of the financial disparity, how Robyn's family prospered while hers languished, sources indicate that Janelle has had enough. What was once garden variety favoritism now appears, in her eyes, to be outright exploitation. And she's not alone in that conclusion. Word is, Janelle has been working behind the scenes, syncing timelines with Christine, posing carefully crafted but blunt questions such as, "Did you ever see where those payments went? Was Robyn ever clear about the nanny costs?" Sources tell us there's now a concerted effort going on by the ex-wives to retrace the money trail, the one TLC never showed. And if even half of what they're assembling proves to be true, it might totally flip the way fans remember it all. The sleek Vegas dead-end years, the Arizona move, and even the so-called one-home controversy that almost tore the whole family apart, because now, it's not so much about who loved whom. It's about who paid for what and who got stuck with the tab. Let's not forget Robyn wasn't Kody's favorite wife. She was also the one with ideas being whispered into his ear, playing herself up as the playful glue of the entire family. And from more and more fans, she might have had much more agency in the story than anyone knew. When you combine that sort of subtle power with access to money, it makes for a volatile cocktail. Robyn managed to present herself as the aggrieved victim while secretly accumulating more cash, more attention, and more emotional capital than anyone else. Janelle and Christine, who were once too tired to challenge it, seem now ready to push back. And TV watchers? They're here for it. Comment sections are overflowing with responses like, "It's about time," and finally, the wives are comparing notes, because whether or not something illicit occurred, the optics themselves are ugly. And in a society where spiritual standing is nearly equated with currency, stripping away that spiritual connection isn't merely a stealthy fade, it's a slap in the face. So now everybody's wondering, is Janelle next? And if so, what then? Because, per AUB, Apostolic United Brethren, dogma, Robyn must be spiritually wed to at least 3 wives in order to keep up the appearance of legitimacy. If she's reduced to only 2, those fissures might become impossible to keep under wraps. Kody Brown has consistently maintained a delicate balance, balancing wives, reputations, power, and public perception. But per people close to production, there's one thing that's unsettled him more than anything else: the concept that the money tables might turn. When rumors began circulating that the ex-wives were following the money, Kody didn't remain silent. Supposedly, he went off on one first on Janelle for snooping, then on Mary for dirtying up the laundry, and lastly on Christine for destroying the family name. But this is the thing. The more he screams, the more he appears desperate. And insiders reveal that beneath all that bravado is something a great deal more vulnerable: panic. What sparked it? One source says, it was a chat that wasn't meant to hit Robyn's ears. It occurred during one of those strained rounds of visits to Mary's bed and breakfast, the polite on the surface, but with tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. A mutual friend supposedly heard Mary say things about transfers she never approved, and Janelle's subdued but telling response, "That's stealing, if that's true." That one sentence unconfirmed as it is rang some alarm bells, because from someone who says they know Kody's attitude, he isn't concerned with going to prison. No, he's afraid of something much more: losing TLC. This program operates on image. Kody's image as the self-assured head of the family, Robyn's image as the loyal last wife standing. But if the public begins to look at their relationship as not sacred but strategic, not emotional, but exploitative. That doesn't just shake up fan loyalty, it shakes up the entire franchise. Yes, audiences watch for drama, but they still need to be able to believe in some sort of sincerity beneath it all. If it's true that one wife was quietly embezzling family money in the name of harmony and Kody either ignored it or assisted in facilitating it, that's not betrayal, that's brand damage. And it's not just the fans Kody need to fear. TLC insiders say they're watching too, very carefully. There have already been hushed discussions in the background, whispers of legal staff sifting through the old contracts, particularly the financial disclosure parts. Because if Kody and Robyn knowingly received shared money from the wives without tracking or having equal voice, if they encouraged the others to continue contributing while the pair maintained control of the funds, that may not lead to criminal charges, but it might result in aborted seasons, sloppy press reports, and a reunion special nobody emerges from unscathed. Nowadays, Kody's private tantrums are not merely about the wives walking away, they're about something even more uncomfortable for a man like him losing control. And when men like Kody lose control, they scramble. Reportedly, he's been attempting to mend fences with Mary making vague apologies, crying promises, and just enough emotional enticement to attempt to silence her. But by someone in the know, Mary's finished. No more playing the spiritual martyr. And now that Janelle and Christine are both paying attention, Kody might finally be outmanned in a way that truly mattered. Yes, Robyn may still be the queen in Kody's world, but if her foundation begins to crack, Kody's whole kingdom could come tumbling down. And something has changed. You can sense it particularly in how women over 50 are appearing all over the internet, in Facebook groups, fan sites, comment sections, and they're not merely discussing gossip. They're swapping lived experience. This latest turn in the Sister Wives saga has touched a nerve much deeper than just Mary or even Robyn. It's about the pattern, the wife who's overlooked, the emotional breadcrumb, the slow realization that you've given too much, for too long, and got too little back. That's why this isn't just another dramatic headline in reality TV land. It's becoming something bigger, a cultural flashpoint. Women, especially women who've survived unbalanced marriages, unspoken emotional labor, or decades of fiscal partnership with no partnership, aren't simply watching. They're connecting, and they're outraged. Dozens of viral messages, written primarily by women in their 50s and 60s, all saying essentially the same thing but in different words. I was married to a Kody. Worse, I was married to a Robyn. One particularly effective post portrayed Robyn as the kind of woman who turns vulnerability into a ladder using other people to climb over while remaining the victim. The post alone accumulated tens of thousands of shares, with comments flooding in from all over the country. This is no longer fan gossip. It's a reckoning. Even tabloid sources have begun to notice. Some recent stories reference what they're dubbing Robyn's empathy paradox, how she comes across as emotionally vulnerable while supposedly monopolizing power. Some marriage experts have even chimed in, observing that Robyn's actions are similar to typical manipulation behaviors in one-sided marriages. Over-apologizing, crocodile tears, deflection, using self-pity. And when you put it all up against a financial news story, in which only one wife received the legal marriage, the mansion, the security, the optics are gutting. And then the fan-made infographic. Yes, infographics. Scrutinizing timelines plotting who paid whom, when homes were purchased, how the family bank account appeared to function or not. One caught me especially painfully. Christine, selling her own jewelry by hand just to scrape by, lined up next to a picture of Robyn during lockdown paying for a nanny, even though she didn't work outside the home. The caption read, simply, "Guess who sacrificed more?" And with each mysterious remark Mary dropped, each subtle video Christine shared, each relaxed but revealing statement Janelle utters, fans are piecing together. This isn't about jealousy. It's not about jealous wives. It's about the increasing feeling that this polygamy experiment didn't function like a family. It functioned like a pyramid scheme. The higher you were, the more you received. The lower you were, the more you gave until you only had excuses and unmet needs left. And now that this awakening is building momentum, it's created velocity kind that doesn't falter. Because when humans don't just observe a betrayal but recognize themselves in it, they don't release it. They insist on answers. And if one more sealed wife walks away, that ripple could travel far beyond Kody's doorstep. It might rock the very faith system that's kept Robyn's seat warm all these years. Because here's the piece ticking loudly beneath it all, the spiritual stakes. Most everyone's been watching for the drama, the tears, the cringeworthy dinners. But to Robyn, This has always been about something far more timeless. In her universe, this isn't merely about relationships falling apart. It's the collapse of salvation. In the AUB, Apostolic United Brethren Church, the one the Browns were part of for so long, spiritual sealings don't only affect this life, they're thought to last into the next. The concept is that a man sealed to several wives creates a celestial family for eternity. But wait, that only holds if the wives remain sealed. If Mary, Janelle, and Christine all sever those connections, Robyn isn't one of three celestial queens. She's merely a woman in a broken monogamy, without a kingdom to follow her on the other side. That's why devotees now think Robyn struggled so mightily to keep Mary spiritually bound. It wasn't love. It was numbers. 3 sealed wives meant divine legitimacy forever. 2 or less, that plural marriage card loses its divine mandate. And, sources whisper, according to former members of the church, when these types of spiritual breakdowns occur, they don't merely cause individual suffering, they have social implications as well. Once a man's spiritual ceilings are considered broken or nullified, his standing in the community begins to collapse. And for Robyn, well, even though Kody has recently distanced himself from their church, those heavenly beliefs remain important, very important. Which is to say that each time one of the original wives leaves, Robyn not only loses social status, she loses the afterlife she's known, the eternal agenda she constructed her entire adult life upon. That terror of divine freefall might be why Robyn's response to Mary's release seemed less heartbreak and more panic. A fan summed it up so well: her on-screen begging didn't seem emotional, it seemed calculated. And when Christine departed, Robyn remained strangely silent. But nowadays, with Mary departed, and Janelle seriously contemplating her spiritual departure, sources indicate that Robyn is close to breaking down, not merely emotionally, but structurally. For with every woman who breaks that divine bond, Robyn has more than divine sisters to lose. She has clout. Her grip on the Brown family legacy grows tenuous, and perhaps most agonizingly of all, her carefully built reputation as the faithful wife left behind runs out of steam. That's the price that hurts. Robyn's gentle voice and shaking tears bought her public sympathy for years. She presented herself as the misinterpreted new girl who just wanted to be one. But now, that facade is unraveling, and in its stead, the fans are witnessing something much more deliberate. Because every spiritual release no longer appears like drifting apart. It appears like escape, and the closer she comes to signing that release, the harder the fans are holding their breath. Because make no mistake, that last domino is wobbling. And as for Robyn, she's looking at a future she never prepared for. A future without control, without community, and worst of all, without the celestial crown she once believed was hers forever. Robyn's world was constructed on skillfully crafted words and the guise of unshakable faith. But now, it's hanging by a thread, and for the first time, she doesn't appear to have a script. TLC insiders confirm the cameras are still rolling, filming every glance, every forced smile, every try to spin the story into something appetizing. But behind the scenes, rumors are bubbling. Lovers. Mary and Janelle comparing not only emotional past but bank statement. And Christine, reportedly asked to shoot a final thoughts segment should the network choose to wrap the show up in payback rather than a reunion. Nothing's official, but the fans can sense it. Something irrevocable is on the horizon. What happens when the perfect sister-wife narrative fractures? What happens when the lady who wept for oneness is viewed as the one who constructed in silence a kingdom upon the backs of the very women she'd referred to as sisters? That's what's happening now. Robyn's long years of whispered explanations, her image as the peacemaker, they're all coming under scrutiny in an unforgiving light. The money question, the spiritual desperation, the one-way loyalty. It's a less sympathetic story to tell. And perhaps most revealing of all, Kody has remained silent, not in a gracious, reflective manner, but in a withdrawing, damage control one. And the fans observe for what it is most probably: fear. Fear of exposure, fear of repercussions, fear of having no girlfriends remaining to shield him from the tale that he is no longer in command of. Because whereas Robyn might have fantasized herself as the last person standing, the devoted queen within a kingdom of heaven, reality appears a hell of a lot more isolated now. Because alone standing isn't power. Not when those you trampled on have finally gotten their voices. Not when your sister wives, whom you underestimated, are now sharing notes, healing, and letting the world in on what they went through. Yes, Robyn might have won Kody, but in the process, she might have lost all else. The spiritual high ground, the sympathy, the authority over the Brown family legacy. And now, with Mary spiritually missing, Janelle on her heels, and Christine thriving in her emancipation, Robyn is confronting something she never anticipated. She's being outgunned, outsmarted, and outrun. So now, here it is where it ends, or perhaps where it really starts. Will Robyn struggle to maintain the picture she painted so carefully? Will she turn the wives' departures into a betrayal, or at last take credit for the part she played in pushing them away? And if she does double down, will anyone even believe her anymore? What do you guys think? Was this Robyn's grand plan the entire time? Or did the power just quietly shift over time, totally and completely? And if Janelle walks too, is Robyn's reign as the last wife standing finally done? Make sure to like, subscribe, and hang around because the next video on your screen is coming. And trust me, you won't want to miss it.